go right up it, because it's here and it's now. Just move every bone. Cosmic powwow, cosmic powwow, cosmic powwow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another session of Toward Equality of Life here in the month of August, year 2009, when our country is in dire straits indeed. And I am going to run through this lecture because it barely could ever fit in the time I have allotted to tell you all these things. So you're going to have to go onto the internet, into the newspapers, wherever you can, look these things up for yourself. And if you can come up with contradictory evidence to what I'm saying, I'd be more than happy to hear it. First, I'm not going to talk about health care today, but because health care is such an important issue and such a gross thing that's underway right now, I'm going to just run past some of the things that are in the health care bill as we know it to date. Number one, that the government will decide what health care you're going to have, and when they give it to you, there'll be no appeals about it. Illegal aliens are going to get all their health care for free under the plans that are being proposed right now. The Fed will have direct access to all bank accounts. Bureaucrats who run the program will have access to all American financial and personal records. The page 195, right, you can go look it up. Taxpayers will subsidize all union, retiree, and community organizers' health plans, like the SEIU, which is affiliated with Barack Obama, the UAW likewise, and ACORN, which has been his long-term organization that he has used to great effect. Abortion, as it stands, is trying to be covered. There's a lot of opposition right in the Congress itself, and certainly many Catholics and many people out there, Christian fundamentalists, will not stand for abortion being covered by the federal government. And then I want you to notice that several advisors that surround Barack Obama have these ideas about health care and are giving him these ideas, and they also belong to what I've talked about before, social justice philosophy, kind of a communist philosophy. And a statement made by one of them goes to some effect like this. You look beyond the needs of patients and you consider social justice, whether the money could be better spent on somebody else when you're making your determinations of who gets what. And of course, health care will be rationed. It's rationed now, but it will really be rationed. And the one that's going to really get hit, there's a special section for cancer. Definitely not going to be doing the kind of treatments people expect, the ongoing treatments, whether they really work out in the end or not. And by the way, you'll be able to tell from this how much cancer treatment really doesn't work in the end because they won't be using it. And it's also people with dementia, Alzheimer's and so forth. These are going to be rationed if maybe excluded altogether. If you have liver disease, bad heart disease, kidney disease, your age, if you're old, if you're too young, if you're just a little baby that's born prematurely or have all kinds of problems, they may not be sinking their money into you. These are some of the things that are on the table right now. Also, the government, this is the most amazing, will instruct and consult people regarding living wills, durable powers of attorney, and they're appearing to lock in the estate taxes ahead of your dying, okay? The government will provide an approved list of end-of-life resources guiding you in death, and the government will mandate a program that orders end-of-life treatment and dictate how your life ends. The Advanced Care Planning Consult will be used to dictate treatment as the patient's health deteriorates. This can include an order for end-of-life plans, an order from the government. And government will decide what level of treatments you may have at the end of life. So just to give you what people are so upset about and where the vagary has come home to roost, as people look into what is known, what is on the table right now, those are some of the chilling facts of this so-called healthcare plan. I'm calling this lecture creepy. I want to show to you that what's happening to our country is we are slowly, gradually going into communism, that there is a collusion with the super elite banking interests and wealth interests of the world, and that we, the people of the United States, are the suckers supporting the very wealthy like we never have before. This did start, this is a continuum. We were doing this with Bush. We are doing it ever more now. Ever more. We have emptied our treasury. We are broke. We have given all our money, and I would want to try to prove to you how this is going to the people who didn't want to lose all their money because of the trouble they were in, and we, the taxpayers, bailed them out, and we continue to bail them out. And also, that with this administration, there is a sort of a going out of the way towards Muslim interests, which, okay, that's fine, but why not say it clearly, that this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, I feel it needs special attention, this is why I'm going out of... Now, all of this really, one of my biggest complaints about it is that it's veiled, it's surreptitious, and it's disguised. And you people mostly listening out there, Americans, United States people, because Canada's American, South America's American, you people out there who live in this country basically don't know what Marxism is, don't know what capitalism is. And remember that capitalism failed us this time, or we got into this, we didn't get into the trouble. The people who had so much money got into trouble. They didn't have to be bailed out. They should have failed. And many an economist will agree with me and has written about this. Many get to the internet, check it out. But it's regulation, everybody not bothering, just like they never bothered with Bernie Madoff. After 6 audits, they gave him a clean bill of health. That's what was going on. Nobody, and even to this day, is really making people do properly what they should. And you don't know about securities trading. How would you know? By and large, not. How would you know whether these things are justified or not? And you don't know about the United States Constitution. And you do know about iPods, you know about Wii, you know about the Red Sox, but you don't know about the United States Constitution, and you don't know that the country is up for grabs, is being grabbed. The heart and soul of the United States is being grabbed. The government is corrupt. Nothing new. Been corrupt is corrupt, and the government is not connected to you. You say no, you say no. You flood the phone calls, you do everything you can. They say yes. We shove it down your throat. And just to show you, and another objection I have, because the present administration is so veiled and so undercover with everything it's doing, just speaking these vague, nice words up front. And that people put so much trust in this administration, believe it without any objective evidence. I will show you, for example, that it too is part and parcel of this corrupt system. For example, not long ago, the Washington Post, which is the handmaiden of the administration, sent letters to lobbyists and other concerned interests of business and so on, saying that they could pay up to $250,000 per person to get a visit with administration officials, with Obama officials. When it was found out that this letter was being circulated, it was a big embarrassment, and they ceased and desisted. Just to show you that for up to $250K, you could get in and meet with Obama people. Okay, now, you are supporting the wealthy. It's a rape, it's wrong, and it's horrible that this has happened to the United States of America. And our collective wealth has been squandered. We are way worse off today as we stand 6 months into this administration than we were even in the fall and certainly in the last 8 years. And now we have Social Security, Medicare, and health care that we do need, that will come due, and we really haven't got the money. A lot of damage has been done. And since January, it's been so careless. Putting things into effect, namby-pamby with abandon, never thinking of the money. Now, guess what? There's no money. Okay, the administration comes in January. There's a crisis, a terrible financial crisis. Not for us, really, for the very wealthy. And I haven't got time to. You write me, I will explain to you how and why, or go find out yourself. And they, insisting not to lose their shirts, come to our treasury. It began in September, October, and grab the money. And then from there, volumes of money have been pouring in. Up to $23 trillion committed by the Fed to these kinds of situations. Now, when this administration came in January, a couple of months or more went by when they wouldn't even fill the top positions at the Treasury, even though we were under siege in this financial situation. What do you call that? And I think they found it fortuitous to work the things they wanted to work by having us in such disarray and inability to do or say or know what the heck's going on. So the fall started it, and then from January on, tons of money have been given to banks. More money has been given to that great big insurance company, AIG, which is still just barely making it by the skin of its teeth, if really at all. And then we took over the auto industry, unheard of. People stood by with their mouths agaghast if they weren't fans of the administration, with their mouths aghast. And you put private business out of business in the United States just with a flick of a finger. Car dealers out of business. The people that have had these businesses for 80 years, you told them, you're out. Wait, it's coming to you. It starts there. It's coming to you. And remember, with this administration, the end justifies the means. So you push these careless, reckless stimulus bill. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Remember that? 780? So you won't know. Don't listen to the people. They're screaming. Don't do it. You do it anyway. Then people always forget they pushed a second reckless stimulus bill for $410. $410 full of earmarks, and people were saying, Obama, you were against earmarks. Stop this bill. He let it go through. So that was another $410 billion. That one always gets overlooked. Then you never sat down to consider and at least spend money on what we need. We wouldn't have spent that money anyway to that extent, but at least make it money that would be useful. As it turns out, it's very much not useful. And infrastructure, which is truly falling apart in this country, only gets 5% of that money. Then you put out some kind of a housing plan, and housing was the crux of the matter as well, for people to come back on their feet. You didn't announce it. You didn't tell people, hey, come buy a house now. This is what you can get. Nobody really got the gist, and it's very hard to figure out. And it didn't fix the problem, and it didn't affect the banks who are sitting on these assets, so to speak, these securities that they allowed to go through that are not valuable today and should have to take a big hit for what they have done. Then you push through a child health care bill. Then you spent $108 billion to the IMF, and then the Congress wrote in another bill that you have to no longer just give money to the IMF and the World Bank, and the Obama administration said they're going to do it anyway, following a pattern of George Bush, which the Democrats complained about greatly, where you ignore what the Congress gives you as a law. Certain parts of it, you just ignore them. Okay, then you're throwing health care. While we have all this other problem with the housing and the banks, now you're throwing health care right from the get-go, cap and trade, which is a horrible bill. You're talking about illegal immigration, and you're foisting it on people, and no matter what the immediate problems were that needed attention, housing, banks, and credit not flowing, you went ahead and just threw all this stuff on top of it anyway, because you have a private agenda. And not only do you not care what's going on, this actually might help to make your agenda come true when everything is in such a crippled situation. Hurry, 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 shove it down people's throats. Well, the housing problem has not been dented. The number of foreclosures continue to rise. There's going to be new resets that are going to cause more problems with people's homes, and tons of people are underwater with their mortgages. There were 2.5 million homes that were supposed to be eligible for the plan, so to speak, that was put in, and only 200,000 have been adjusted so far. We're stuck in the mud with housing. Now Fannie and Freddie, huge part, half of the mortgage industry or more, even more, they're in huge, mega financial trouble, and they're already coming back asking for more money. All these pressing real problems that if we want to maintain the health and economic vitality of this country should have been addressed, they have been ignored. And scams abounded to people in housing, people especially at the lower end of housing with all these scam artists trying to tell them they'd give them a loan and everything, and some people fell for this and lost even more money. And then the government, instead of showing you the way how to go and buy homes now and get a deal on them and get some credits, they came out with the idea that they will take the deeds to people's homes and they will allow them to rent their homes from the government. Sounds very communist to me. That's what communists do. They take the homes and they own them. And the little banks are dying, and they're hurt, and they're paying for the big banks. A lot of this I can't explain to you in detail. You have to go look it up. So wasteful how money is given to the rich, no consideration, no thought for the greater good. Could have done something sensible about the economy, but didn't. Lost all of our money, and now we are deep in doo-doo debt. Now, the bailout was to banks, to hedge funds, very wealthy individuals, to people holding losing derivative contracts on which they owed a lot of money, and secured contracts that didn't really turn out to be that secure, and they were defaulting, and these people refused to lose. The same way everybody refused to take a lower price for their home. Everybody refused. We bailed them out. 23 trillion of our dollars has been given out or committed through the Federal Reserve to these kinds of wealthy interests. And if there was $4 to $5 trillion in FDIC bank accounts, people who took low interest rates, didn't do the stock market, or just had extra money there, they were guaranteed the government would bail them out. If the government let the banks bankrupt and all these people who were playing on a much higher level of finances were allowed to fail, and the government need to bail out FDIC, they could have saved money and they wouldn't have had to bail out every single bank anyway. Now they've gone way over, and if you were in the stock market or other uninsured instruments, too bad, because those are never insured, and so be careful if your broker tells you you should rightfully lose money when stuff hits the fan. Okay. But we've given our fortune and our posterity to the wealthy. It's scandalous. And there's no bipartisanship. Bipartisanship is not about having people come over for drinks and because you did that, expecting them then to follow what you want them to do. Now, you gave $50 billion to GM. Thousands were laid off prior to all this disaster. Many were laid off along the way to this disaster. More are getting laid off now. The bondholders were shafted. The unions were put in charge. Of course, the administration is in charge of them, and the car dealers are out of business. By what authority? They should have gone bankrupt. They should have gone bankrupt. But on their own, the way it's supposed to happen. And your taxes are going to go up like crazy. Whether you're rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight, everyone is going to be worse off. The rich can leave. They can go elsewhere. The money's gone, and we owe it. This is an immaturity and an inexperience and a fanaticism of the extreme left that's going on in this country right now. Lack of regard. They're saying they're going to transform. What does transform mean? They talked in vagaries. The hardcore insistence to force a quiet overthrow and wrecking ball to the economy as it exists now. And we're all going to be worse off. We need public discourse. We don't need the veiled change, transformation. We need stuff loud and clear on the table, what you are doing, why you are doing it in concrete detail, not disguised, not stealth, not veiled. We all need to participate, especially when you're trying to make transformational changes that turn the system on its head and put us into a system that we never dreamed, even those of us who voted for Obama, would ever happen in this country. You can't come in and wreck the financial system, put in communism, and not let people know. So, anyway, the power is usurped. And the extreme left, as I said in another lecture, is like the extreme right. They both lack judgment. Doesn't matter which side you're on. When you're at the extreme and you insist to shove it down people's throats, and can only be that way, you lack judgment, because the world is not black and white. The world is ambiguous and shades of gray, and people have all kinds of opinions, and we have to find some happy medium where we kind of, mix it up and get everybody a little bit satisfied and nobody totally happy. There are nutcases in control of the government. There are limousine progressives in control of the Congress. People that walk on plushy carpets and get limousines and fly all over the world. These are our congressional people. They're not out in the open. Let's look at what we can really see objectively, not the flowery words, and figure out that it's a quiet revolution. In fact, a new Chevrolet ad has the slogan, "It's an American Revolution." And it creeps up on you. They creep it up, just the way Barack Obama added his name Hussein after not allowing people to have his name Hussein. It creeps up on you slowly but surely. There is a hidden agenda, and there are relatively broad coalitions who are aligned and in the background all together making this new situation happen. And I say, who the hell are you to dictate how we live without asking and without telling, just because people voted for quote-unquote change? You were not elected to run my life or your life or tell me what to do. I remember once on an open conference, one of the rare ones, I think the only one he ever gave, in which even the left writers had said how he dodged the questions as skillfully, like someone dodges getting caught on the basketball court. He said, they asked him, what's the hardest thing about being president? He said, getting people to do what I want. Surprise. And you know, he's on TV constantly. Does he not stay in his office? He's constantly. You know, in North Korea, the leader's face, there's a TV in every house, and at least last I knew about this, and you have to leave that on, and the leader is in your house, ever present above you. And Obama is constant, every day, he's on TV. I never saw anything like that. Is he ever, you know, deep at work? And then there's a TV infomercial about him on one of the stations that runs at night, probably an hour-long thing, of course, you know, in glowing terms, our leader. And then ads all night. He's on ads, too. If you flick around, you're up late at night, who do you see? Obama. There was one lady who was selling her TVs because she couldn't take it anymore. So, a lot of this is out of Chicago. A lot of this is with this social justice philosophy, which I've described in previous lectures, black liberation theology, and Marxism, of which you are so unaware by and large. These people know and have spent their life studying how to make an undercover revolution dictate and control how we live. And Obama has been very artful in using ACORN and now also AmeriCorps in getting his army, if you will, out there. Long time he's been a key figure with them, part of this social justice momentum, which back in the old days was not even that long ago, was called communist agitation. There's been a coup. Protecting powers, and they're protecting their power and goals like rabid, frenzied dogs. You couldn't get that power away. They are holding it. Nancy Pelosi, Reid, the rest of them, Steny Hoyer. They are holding on to it, and you aren't going to get it from them, and they are going to push their agenda onto you. And they obsess so much about the people who won't come along with them. If you look at MSNBC, you will see them talk about Sarah Palin. You will see them, even Fox is not even, they're so obsessed, Rushland, they can't stand that people are not with them, what to do with this opposition. They can't take it. And in communism, everyone must obey. In freedom, the United States of America, for which it is known, civil disobedience and opposition is a virtue. We are completely supporting concentration of wealth in the hands of a few, and we have given over so much money, and the damage has been done. We are paying dearly for this. You will see the chickens and the vaguenesses come home to roost. Banking interests, certain corporations, and other vested interests that communist governments want and need, they need them the way the world exists now, go hand in hand with them as it so happens. Now, to a certain extent, Barack Obama, even though he wrote the books about himself, which probably puts in people's minds this is the whole story or this is the story to hear, and even there he talks about always affiliating with radical leftist Marxists, that this was his taste. And that, he said, his parents were both communists and they were studying Russian during the Cold War. He was tutored, mentored by communist Frank Davis, who's in his book, and so on. We won't go into that. All right. And And a lot of hidden affiliations that we don't know about. All this stuff, if you really pay attention, you will see what is coming to pass out of the woodwork. And world affiliations beyond the United States of America. And if you go back to some of the words of Michelle Obama prior to her being rehabilitated to be a more gracious and sympathetic figure as she has been now, you will see her talking about you'll never be able to be uninvolved, you will work, this is a mean country, your soul is broken, and Obama deigns to come down and do this for you. Read some of the early words. And you will see in communism, of course, somebody rules and all the rest work and they get whatever the communist government wants to mete out to them for whatever they decide is a proper reason to a proper extent. So you work and other people rule. If you can show me another way than what I'm talking to you about, please bring it to my attention. But I'm asking you to look at actual behavior and read and research more, not just the words that are so vague. Obama has not been straight and he has not been sincere. Did he tell you that he would smash the economy? Did he tell you he would give away all the money and money that we don't even have, putting us in deeper and deeper debt? Our deficit used to be half a trillion. It's now 1.3 trillion already this year. It used to be annually half a trillion. Now, for half the year I just read, it's 1.3 trillion. And did he tell you he was going to change the very foundation of how we live? He gave you clues, but I doubt most people. Of course, he's got the fanatics who've been with him and were behind him, pushing him ever harder. But most people, by and large, didn't have a clue and probably still don't have a clue because they're still working, going to work, driving their car, and listening to the flowery language. Okay, war. Did he tell you he would expand the war? Did you not think that you would be war-free, that the people would be home from Iraq? Did he tell you that he would go into Pakistan and escalate the bombings of drones onto the people, many of them civilians being killed and making us more enemies? Did he tell you his rationale for increasing in Afghanistan? Did he give you his rationale for Pakistan? Okay. And he's caused us so many more problems than we ever had up till now. Taxes, oh boy, you will see taxes. You will see. Right now, you're living okay. All right. You don't think so. Okay. And the quality of life inexorably will be decreased for all of us. Now, if you don't know what statism is, communism, please think. Does Putin ring a bell? Does Ortega ring a bell with the Sandinistas? Does Castro ring a bell? Does Chavez? The closest one is Chavez that I can think, because Chavez doesn't have a completely communist country, but he's taking over things bit by bit every day. And one thing, too, when Obama met Putin, he said later that he was smart and that he was not sentimental. And believe it or not, Obama probably is not sentimental. He's kind of a cold guy. In other words, when you have an agenda to do, you can't look at the messy stuff in between. You have an overarching goal that you have to achieve. And he would not, for example, at that time also admit that the United States had anything to do with the fall of Russia. If you look hard, you can see clues. And also, I know you're going to think, oh, this is stretched far, but when his daughter wanted a dog, after many months, before they even decided to get one, he said that she had earned a dog. It's very, very communistic. I've had a very first-hand experience with communist ideologues that are smitten with this infection and run their lives according to communists. They either eat it, breathe it, think it. They tell you you earn something. They decide when and how and what you earn. And by the way, when Iran was exploding like we are having so many protests now by people that are freaked out over what's happening in general and with healthcare. And do you know that more than 100 of those protesters that were jailed were killed, were executed after they were tortured? And so Obama, for days when he didn't have anything to say about that. But when the communist leader of Honduras got ousted because he wanted to make his presidency more permanent, Obama spoke within hours of that to bring him back to Honduras. Now, communism, the sine qua non of communism is to redistribute the wealth. It's not socialism, it's not oligarchy, it's not technocracy, any other name you want to put on it. It's not fascism per se, though we could say we have fascism, I can't get into that. It's the redistribution of wealth is the sine qua non of communism. State ownership. Anybody say GM and healthcare and doctors, which he's going to own? State media, can anyone say MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, which held back a story on his deep immersement and affiliation with Acorn during the election in order that he not get some bad news against him and be able to win the election. And they're kind of heartless. Religion, they are the religion. They indoctrinate youth, and the end justifies the means, and they think of people and things in terms of utilitarian value. This is not about ethics and morals, except the moral to cut people down to size and make everyone subjugated to this idea that you're now all a collective and we'll tell you what to do. And there is no free speech. Is this not what's going on in this country right now? Is this not that the administration put out a notice on its website that if you hear anyone giving, quote, disinformation about health care, let them know about it. Or even if you hear casual conversations that are, quote, unquote, disinformation or opposition to what they want to do. They called the people, this is so offensive because I've spoken with scores of these people who are protesting, some of whom are Democrats and many of whom are independents, and many of whom have people in the military or have served in the military. And they so much know about the Constitution and freedom and so much believe in what they've been in the military for, and they are appalled. And to call these people organized angry mobs is such an insult and slap in the face. Call them the Brooks Brothers Brigade, which Nancy Pelosi did. Call them a coalition of cranks. And call them, sabotaging the democracy. Harry Reid, can you imagine people standing up and letting their voices be heard, being spoken to this way? With this administration, if you look hard, there is only one way, and that's their way. And it's about cutting people down to size. And what they can't control, they ridicule. You might have seen that happen from time to time. Now, who is Barack Obama? Because you do not, for the most part, know who he is. He's a communist, number one. Not a socialist, redistributing the wealth, having a collectivism, having your armies go out and do the work for you. And by the way, he's sending those armies, some of whom are Acorn, some of whom are SEIU, and they're all affiliated with each other, to these town hall meetings now. And I was listening to a lady on the radio explain how they strong-armed the people at one and didn't let them in, and they left them in the hallway. Overflow crowds. And strong-armed their way to prevent the town hall from going on with the people being so angry. Now, very interestingly, as an aside, Barack Obama, I don't care. I don't believe he's too religious personally. That's neither here nor there. I don't care if his religion is a Muslim religion, the Catholic religion, a Christian religion. I don't care if he has a religion. But he said he was Christian and so on. It's very interesting that he hasn't been to church since he took office, except on Easter when the media started saying, oh, what church is he going to go to? What church? So he had to choose a church because they've made it a big issue. And he's been to some mosques in the meantime. In fact, he went to some mosques serendipitously when he was in the midst of the election. Why not openly? What is the big deal? What is the big deal? And I say that he hasn't been to church in Washington, D.C. because there are no Christian churches there, black churches, white churches, that preach goddamn America. He is a control freak. He's not a leader, he's a controller. He's pretty quiet on things you'd expect him to lead on. Of course, that may fit with his agenda. And he's a narcissist. Everything is about him. And he's on that television telling you what to do, what to think. He wants to make you think, follow in line with what he wants you to think. Most of all, he understands political power. He's a master of being in power and keeping power. And he's somewhat of a thug. He and his cronies it's notoriously thuggish in Chicago. They lean on people. Rahm Emanuel, his sidekick, when he was in another election and they took some losses, as they sat at a dinner after the election, he took his steak knife and he stabbed it into the desk, naming each name, saying they were dead. Okay? And talk about expletives. In any sentence, he has more expletives than he has words. These are people that strong-arm people. Now, there was an inspector general in Sacramento area who told one of Obama's friends who was getting money through AmeriCorps, I believe it was, he can't spend money on himself. He was spending the money on himself. He got fired. He was supposed to get a notice. It was supposed to go through Congress. This was a very high-level job. He threw him out. He threw him out when the guy told his friend he can't be spending that money wrong. They leaned on people with the stimulus money. They threatened them when they objected to certain aspects of it. He had Acorn SEIU. His people went out and they protested AIG and and leaned on them and made them fear for their lives. They were getting death threats. I don't say they didn't do wrong and they never should have gotten bailed out, but this is intimidation. He said to some of these leaders one day, the only thing between you and the pitchfork is me. You and the pitchforks outside is me, he said. And they said yesterday in their talking points to the Democrats who have to go to these town meetings where people are freaking out, their advice to them was punch back twice as hard. Read it for yourself. This was what they told them to do. Punch back twice as hard. And Obama had said to his people one while where it was nip and tuck when he was running, I remember, he got his people together and he says, get in their faces. This is Chicago-style politics. This is community organizer, communist agitator politics. This is thug politics. And there are nutcases and nutcases that are allies of his. Some of them are czars in the White House and otherwise advisors. His green czar is an avowed communist, point blank. That's number one. Others of them have views who are advising him that a child, go read about this, is not a human until 2 years old when it's socialized. That the value of life has to be thought of sort of mathematically. For example, a disabled person could be worth half of what a whole person is. That an old and the very young are less valuable. That there should be forced abortions was a thought of one of them at one time. That we should make it hard on families because families are not a good way for people any longer to be living. And one lawyer working in, I forgot which department, had wrote about that carrying a baby to term is like being a fetal container for the state. These are the ideas of people in Obama's administration, some of the people. Now, remember too Napolitano, head of, quote, Homeland Security. Remember when she put out the notice to police departments, who to be afraid of in this country? She said veterans returning from war, animal rights people, black power people, gun rights people, abortion rights people. These are the enemies of the state. Nowhere in there did she ever mention jihad terrorists or people of this ilk, whatever you want to label them as. That wasn't in the memo. And do you know that just 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, in Chicago, right outside Chicago at a Hilton, there was an open and advertised conference on becoming a radical Muslim to overthrow capitalism and the United States, right in Chicago, in broad daylight. And because we are a free country, it was allowed to proceed. Now, at another time, you remember abortion doctor died, a guy who did late-term abortions. Someone shot him. the bad. I don't agree with that. Right away, Obama came out, oh, how terrible. That same day, a guy who had returned from a terror training camp abroad went to an Army recruit station and killed one recruiter and wounded another. Not a word. Not a word. Now, these nuts have got the power, and you cannot pry it away. You cannot pry it away. And they are colluding with corporations, and corporations are colluding with them and Wall Street. And I never forgot how Obama said in the fall when this whole thing broke, they said, John McCain ran to Washington, whether that was good or not, neither here nor there. Obama said, if they need me, they'll call me. In his usual, cool, dispassionate way. And he certainly needs them, and they certainly call him, and vice versa. In 2004, Obama was unknown, had nothing behind him, really had achieved nothing per se that you could point to, and he got the prime slot at the Democratic Convention somehow. In 2006, he was a featured guest of Goldman Sachs. This is the big powerhouse that stands today and has made fantastic money the last quarter after having gotten money from us, gotten money from AIG that they helped negotiate so they could get their money from AIG. And somehow in 2006, Obama, he wasn't even on the scene then, not nationally. He wasn't known to most of us, and he got to be the featured guest for Goldman Sachs, the most powerful firm on Wall Street. And they gave him $800,000 to jumpstart his campaign. And they helped collect money for him from other firms. In 2007, at the Museum of Modern Art, there was a discussion moderated by Tom Brokaw for Goldman Sachs, and Obama was the speaker. And that was not anything publicly divulged. It wasn't on his schedule. He has been secretly guided by or, had dealings with Goldman Sachs. Goldman needs him. And Goldman is infiltrated, as have any of the vested interests that remain standing today. Our Treasury Department and Fed, they all know each other. This is not new to Obama, except that Obama people think is different, that he's breaking with all this. That's why it's so upsetting, because he veils it like it's not going on. The Treasury, the Fed, they just exchange. Even Paulson said that he meets with all sides so they can all be on the same page. And it continues to go on. This guy Geithner, who's so laughable, that is the Treasury head. When he talks, he says, he gives you the answer like that. Doesn't know what he's doing, really. Never says anything worth hearing. Also, former head of the New York Fed, and very much in with this whole cadre of people that are in the upper echelons of wealth. A revolving door, and they make decisions in concert, and people are even questioning now if Goldman Sachs gets the inside scoop, being so much a part of our very treasury, etc. Communism always has an elite. There's always people that live better. They rule and you work. They decide what to give you, and you have to earn it, okay? And unions typically go hand in hand. I'm not against unions at all, but unions are part of this now. And Acorn, by the way, do you know Obama has moved the census out of the Department of Commerce and wants to give it to Acorn to do? And Acorn, who has had up to 1/3 of the votes disqualified that it has gone out to collect, and has been his right-hand army of people going out leaning on people, leaning on institutions. And AmeriCorps now expanding, a civilian force, as Obama spoke of, that would be as strong as a military one, where they indoctrinate people about homosexuality. We don't need the government to put an agenda that we accept homosexuals. Let homosexuals do it. We don't need an agenda to try to talk to people about this and propagandize about it. And self-esteem and other forms, Lord only knows, as this thing is allowed to go and people don't know and don't speak up. And the Islamic sympathies. Now, when Obama went to Ghana, instead of Kenya. And you know his father, his true father, was from Kenya. So it was a surprise, especially to the people of Kenya and people of Africa, and probably if you're paying attention to people in this country. But does the United States know that Obama in 2006 went to Kenya and worked for Odinga, who is in the opposition of the government of Kenya and did not win, and that $900,000 labeled from the friends of Barack Obama was contributed from the United States to his campaign. And then in 2007 he came and worked with Obama for a while. And what is it about Mr. Odinga? Well, that's okay, but bring it out. He made a deal with an Arab oil consortium, which is very involved in Africa, of course. He made a deal with them that if he gets in, that he would establish Sharia law in Kenya. You can go find this. This is not made up. And Kenya is mostly a Christian country. The one time I heard Obama talk a little bit more from the heart, but still not passionately, was when he was in Ghana, and it was very interesting how he talked about slavery. That I appreciated. He was a little more candid. And as far as Professor Gates on slavery, I did watch his specials on it as much as I could see them. I thought they were fabulous, what he did on slavery. Heartfelt and very insightful. Very great stuff. Now, Barack Obama made a statement, so then he has this so-called beer fest at the White House, but what do? They just put a still camera on a table that's mute. The professor doesn't apologize. The policeman doesn't apologize. They both leave with their same positions. There's no discussion. And Barack Obama could have spoken up, and shouldn't he have had them formally inside the White House as a momentous occasion? So let this discussion between the races begin. Open it up, bring it on. Many African American people would love and have so much inside of them they want to hear it spill out. We need to have this. But there's nothing spontaneous about Obama. And he's got everything he says is, teleprompted and never spontaneous. And I don't know why he couldn't take that on. Obama doesn't particularly like the U.S. as it is and as its history has been, mainly for its capitalism. He said in 2001 the Constitution doesn't allow for the redistribution of wealth, which is what he's about. He's cold. For example, he wanted to have veterans pay their own health care, even for things they suffered in conflicts. And the head of some veterans association went to talk to him and remarked, boy, was he cold. He wouldn't, give an inch on anything. And when he was in Illinois, I have to say this, when you have a full baby born, late-term abortion, by mistake, it was supposed to be dead, what do you want to do? Obama was the only one to say, we still want to call it a fetus. In other words, that it should be done away with. And when the 9/11 families went to talk to him about what he was going to do with the detainees, they noticed, geez, he's very dispassionate. He didn't seem to make a dent in him at all about what we were saying. And when the D.C. school children were going to lose their charter schools that the government was giving them vouchers to go to, and Obama was going to make everybody have to be in his school system, he didn't hear it. He didn't hear that. He didn't hear that. No. And once he said, too, I'm paraphrasing, I read something he said, what does it matter if any particular child is born? Okay. Now, also he's made limits on compensation so far to financial firms. He's going for doctors in this health care plan, and believe me, it's coming to you. It's creeping. It's creeping. It's coming to you. As far as I'm concerned, it's a violation of the U.S. Constitution to give away the people's money, to stifle free speech, as is going on now with thought police, to escalate war without really explaining or telling about it, and to steal private business. And what are the presidential powers? To appoint government personnel, do foreign relations, and be commander-in-chief, pretty much. So he's grabbing all the money, and the means of making money are going under government control. He never had a job of his own where he really had to make that money, as far as we know. I don't know, in any really long, significant term way. He always was with the nonprofits, and boy, does he ever know how to get money. Oh, multi-millions, through his hands in this nonprofit situation. Okay. And he's aligned with the biggest banking houses of the world. Maybe in the future, they won't be so aligned either, but first things first. You can't do everything overnight. Freedom, liberty, and the right to be left alone is going out the window, which is what the United States is all about. You are losing your freedom and liberties. We must keep government out of our lives. The first ones we should take money from should be Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Boxer, Oprah, who said that Obama's tongue is dipped in gold, Edward Kennedy, whose tumor might have affected his judgment when he lined up to go along with this program. Is this the health care he had in mind of what I've just said to you, which has been a lifelong endeavor of his to bring? I'm not against universal health care. I'm sure as hell against the government counseling you on end-of-life options. Okay. And furthermore, doctors and patients should be in charge of your health care together. Nobody else. What the hell do you need a doctor for if somebody else is going to tell you what to do? So what we have now is increasing government ownership of your life, your bank account, according to what's on the table here, your salary, your health. But it doesn't stop him from trying to buy a very nice house in that section of Chicago where Resco lived as well, with the help of Resco. That, you know, the rulers, they live well. Go to China, see how well they live. And it didn't stop Michelle Obama from $10,000 dresses, $6,000 purse made of alligator, which I guess the environmentalists who support Obama didn't point out that we don't do alligator anymore, and the $560 sneakers she sported, and the $30,000 date they took to New York City and stopped all the traffic to boot, and the 2-day extension she took in England, which cost us 2 days more of all the security and extra planes because of it. Oh, even though we're in very tight financial circumstances. And the congressional millionaires, they just voted themselves some new jets. It went through. The people objected in the Congress, but they got it through. They sneaked it in, I just read today. They got themselves some nice, beautiful new jets to fly around in. We having hard times? Where is this money coming from? Get to work. Get to work for your minimum wage. And the health care of Congress is not the health care I pointed out to you in the beginning, and they don't want to sign up for the health care I pointed out to you. And Obama was asked earlier on about this health care, would he want it for himself? He said no. He must have made a big mistake that day. He said he would pay out of pocket for what was needed. No, he wouldn't want that plan for him or his family. You don't know anything about him. He's making a mess, and damage, irrevocable damage, has happened. Let's look at what he's done so far. $60 million or more for the school system, for this social justice program in Chicago, when he was working in Chicago, deemed to be a total nothing after it was all done by the Annenberg Project that gave the money. Resco, he gave him money to develop low-income housing. It soon stood as slums, in disrepair, totally run down in a short period of time. Valerie Jarrett, who's a very close advisor to him out of Chicago, herself has been a slum landlord, might still be today. You'd have to check. And Michelle Obama started some hospital policy in Chicago that made this flowery reason why we shouldn't accept the poor in the hospital. And they were interviewing a lot of people about it. Most of them African American who lived in the neighborhood, saying they can't no longer go to that hospital. Ever since that happened, they travel sometimes an hour away. They can't use that hospital. Okay. His record in the Illinois states, nobody uses the word present so much. He doesn't commit himself one way or another. He's got the overarching agenda. And his oratory is all teleprompter. He reads well. What is his real oratory? I'd like to know. And is it because what's really on his mind can't come out, but he just reads and reads and reads and reads, which presidents do. But boy, this is excessive. He rarely allowed spontaneous, and there's been a couple times he's been caught spontaneous. It hasn't been pretty. Probably because he's so careful of exactly how he says what he says. And by the way, he pre-selects his questioners. And who knows, sometimes the questions are pre-selected. And the time he was asked about the Professor Gates thing, that was a pre-selected question, is what we were hearing. Okay, so you know nothing about him, and actions speak louder than words. No college records from Occidental, no Columbia records, no Harvard records, no selective service, no medical records, no law practice client records, no. This birth certificate is a very interesting situation because a military person challenged it and said he wouldn't go over to Iraq because Obama wasn't really born here. And guess what? The military said, okay, you don't have to go. End of story. And then also Obama keeps fighting this in court instead of making the state open the vaults and show it. I can't get into all the details, but check it out. And passport. His passport was going to show some very interesting things. And the one person who knew about it, someone illegally went in and tried to look in his passport, and the one government person who knew about it was found dead. Okay. Transforming nation into something you don't recognize. You're being slow cooked like a frog that doesn't even know they're getting cooked, and you love your servitude. Okay. And when you look at people and you tell them, did you hear this about healthcare or whatever, they crinkle their brow. What? And they don't really want to go further. Now, people like to blame Bush. They like to blame Bush. This is not about Bush. It's certainly a continuation of policies under Bush, but it's not, it's Bush overblown. Bush 4 or 5 times over. For example, Obama will not allow you to see the logs of who visits the White House, which used to be a big complaint about Cheney and Bush. How can they keep secret who's going to the White House? His Patriot Act is stronger than, his voting for a Patriot Act that's stronger than the one before is what occurred. He won't let you see information about the detainees, or his administration won't. He's decided to ignore parts of bills passed by Congress that he doesn't want to follow. He's got a tin ear to this. So blaming Bush is so not the issue here. Did we suffer under Bush? Did we have 8 years of loss, of problems increasing and solutions nowhere to be found? We certainly did. But boy, have we got that now. So please, let's not go back to what Bush did, because if you really want to show pound for pound, boy, they have a lot of really similar policies. I don't care who you are, unless you want to be controlled by the state and the corporate elite, Barack Obama is not good for you. And corporations are not good for you. And I'd like to take that up at a different time. You know, I've talked about that somewhat in the past. Let's go back to Goldman Sachs for a minute. Goldman Sachs in the last quarter, as I said before, made a huge profit in their trading business, and they're doing the same kind of trading that was supposedly so bad and maligned before, which I don't necessarily agree with that they're doing either, but that's where it stands with them. And they have been proponents of this cap and trade bill. And always follow the money with this cap and trade, with this health care, and this energy stuff. They're all lined up, the particular interests that are going to get the contracts, that are going to own everything, that are going to be more control of you than they've ever been before. Can't get into cap and trade. A horrible, horrible bill. Horrible. And guess who gets to run the markets, the exchange for people trading these credits for energy? Goldman Sachs. And who has been spending money to push the idea of cap and trade? Goldman Sachs. And GE, Jeff Immelt, the head of GE, not too long ago with Obama, met with Obama, came out smiling ear to ear. And they asked him, all right, what was it about? He said, we had a good discussion about who's going to control the energy. Can you say GE? And guess who has all the stuff ready on this energy bill with their electric grid, this so-called smart grid, which is another very bad thing for you, windmills and everything else? GE. Guess who got to transform their GE capital arm, which is a financer for mortgages and so on, and was not a bank, but got to make it a holding bank, and thereby got $140 billion out of our Federal Reserve by that favor. And guess who owns NBC, MSNBC, and CNBC? Most of which talks lovingly of the great leader. Guess who? Guess who? GE. Follow the money. Ladies and gentlemen, guess who were the biggest contributors to the campaign of Barack Obama in the top 6? Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. That's what I have to tell you today. Follow the money, learn more, go find out about this stuff yourself. If you have other stuff that would paint a different picture, please let me know. I'd be glad to hear it. And let this lecture rest as a tome. for history. God bless America. God bless America. Thank you.